Story 1, this is Fireteam Delta. Dad's coming home. Welcome to the Military Veteran Dad Podcast, where it is our mission to bring every dad home. I am your host, Ben Killoy. I'm a United States Marine veteran, husband, and a father. We will bring authentic conversations to inspire action in your life so we can close the gap between the dad you are today and the dad you want to be tomorrow. This is the Military Veteran Dad Podcast. Before we get started with this week's episode, I just wanted to pause for a minute and thank each one of you. Every week I have the opportunity to bring other military veteran dads with you and connect and share their stories, and every week you guys show up and continue to listen. And I truly, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate that support. I get messages, I get Facebook shares, and I continue to know that this is the right mission for where we're going to make a difference in the lives of other military veteran dads. To help other military veteran dads find this, if I could ask one favor, it would really appreciate if you could go on iTunes and leave us a review. Those reviews help us get this podcast out to other military veteran dads. And now, on with the show. Today on the show, I have Michael Mapes. He is currently serving active duty in the Air Force. He is married and has 4 sons, the ages of 6, 4, 2, and a brand new 9-month-old. He has been deployed to Afghanistan and Kuwait. He grew up in Mesa, Arizona. He has a passion for living out his faith and raising his boys to be good men. He has an associate's in applied sciences and bachelor in health and wellness, and is currently pursuing a master's in human services counseling. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Describe what your family looks like now and any gaps in that intro.
You've nailed it pretty much. I got a large family, 4 boys. I like to make the joke that's why I shave my head, is because I have no hair to pull out, because they do drive us up the wall sometimes. But it's a blessing to have, 1, generally speaking, children, and 2, to have all boys. I kind of get to raise, 4 new warriors for our country and 4 strong men. But
and this way you don't have to show the gray hairs as they get older.
Yeah, it's true.
When you hear the words "come home, Michael," what do those mean to you?
When I hear the words "come home," I look at it 2 different ways. One is the physical, coming home, say from a deployment, for example. You're actually coming home. But 2, coming home also means that it's not just you physically coming home. You're emotionally coming home. You're mentally coming home, because it can be kind of hard to make that adjustment sometimes. Going from, to use the example again, deployed location to back home, which is something my wife and I were still working through, because I have a deployment that was still pretty fresh. But coming home just means you're physically there, but you're also making the effort to be emotionally and mentally involved with all members of your family.
What do you find the biggest hurdle in that transition for you personally?
Personally, for me, it was just adjusting back to family life. When I came back from my deployment in Afghanistan, it was just essentially me taking care of me. I mean, I have some of my junior enlisted airmen to take care of and look out for, but really, I was responsible for myself. I didn't have the worries of, raising my boys and stuff like that. I still, did what I could while I was down there. But the biggest hurdle was definitely integrating back into the family life, because there was no adjustment period really. I came back home with my youngest son. Now he was 2 months old at the time, so I had a brand new baby boy, and then my 3 boys were all over me, and it didn't get me freaked out or worked up or anything. But there was no adjustment. I went from one high ops tempo to another one in a different context though.
Is there a part of that you thought was going to be easy and it ended up being harder, or did you kind of go in with the mindset it was going to be hard all around?
It was the opposite. I thought I could come in and just pick up right where I left off, but that was not very smart thinking for me. It was definitely harder to transition back in, into my role as a husband and a father. I thought I could just come back and do my thing. Everything would be just the way it was, but it's I came back a different person. My family, they're different people too. So we all continued to grow while I was gone. So there was definitely a lot of things to overcome and adjust to.
Any advice you want to give out there to other military veteran dads coming home and facing that similar hurdle? Or maybe they've been home for a while and they can't figure out how to reintegrate?
I would say be patient with yourself. Be patient with your wife or significant other. Definitely be patient with your kids. It could be overwhelming. Not too many times where I felt like I was being overwhelmed. There was a few times when all the kids were getting all worked up, and I kind of felt like a large amount of stress building up. So I had to step back for like 5 minutes, just go to my room and take a moment to breathe, collect myself, and then come back down and reassess. But definitely, just have patience. Seek to continue to pour into your children and your wife and love and serve them, and don't let go of that. Don't let any of the negativity from stress or anything like that overcome you. Just be patient with yourself and do what you got to do to make those relationships strong again.
It's good advice. I believe kids still love TIME. What are some simple hacks you use to connect with your kids that don't cost a lot of money, but they have a huge impact on them?
The things I think my boys love to engage with is just that roughhouse time. Me doing some classic WWF moves. I say WWF because that's, I grew up in that attitude era. I don't say WWE. Do like power bombing them on the couch and carefully, of course. I'm not trying to hurt my kids, but a dad, he should be roughhousing with his kids. My boys love it. We'll roughhouse. They love to work out with me. They'll come into the garage and they'll work on my agility drill ladder, and they'll hit the heavy bag and then just run around. And just that spending that intentional time with them really is what they love. Whether it's, we're doing some type of physical activity, roughhousing, or working out, or doing some type of craft. My boys they just love when daddy's home and he's there and present with them.
And the part about working out in the garage, I can only imagine that for that part, it's just they like following in their dad's footsteps. They like doing things that dad's doing.
I bring them in there because, one, to get some of the energy out. It gets them out of mom's hair. But I want them to know the importance of physical activity and staying fit to fight. Even if they don't go into any career such as the military or law enforcement or anything like that, it's still important to be fit.
Especially in this day and age, that the kids need to have the habit ingrained that health is something that takes daily investments. Doesn't just happen naturally.
Yeah.
What do you want your kids to remember about you when they're 30? What do you want them to say to their friends about their dad?
I want to tackle this question in two different ways. One, I want them to remember the life lessons that I tried to impart on them. I tried to be much more intentional than what my father was with raising me and my brothers. And I come from a family of 4 brothers, me and my 3 brothers. And so now I'm raising 4 sons of my own. And I don't think it's a coincidence. There's a lot of negative cycles in the Mapes family's past, and stuff that a lot of family members keep falling into. Some have found their way out and broken the cycles, but I think this is my opportunity to remake a branch on the Mapes family tree. And so I want them to remember, when they're 30 years old and beyond, the life lessons about being a warrior for your community, or country and family, about being a leader, about being man, and lessons about manhood. I want them to remember that stuff. And then I also want them, as like speaking about myself specifically, is that, hey, Dad, he didn't have it perfect, but he tried his best, and he loved us with all of his heart, and he tried to give us a stronger foundation than what he had grown up with his own dad. So those are the things that I want them to remember. And one way that I'm trying to ensure that happens is, and I encourage any fathers out there that aren't doing this to do this, and if they are, then hell yeah, good on them. Is I have several different journals that I write in that I want my kids to look back on when they're older, and I'm older, or maybe even dead and gone. And that's why I write it, because I'm active duty military, I'm Air Force Security Forces. And so my job doesn't necessarily put us in the front line anymore these days, but we're still the sheepdogs for the air bases. And so we still have the possibility of dying in some type of confrontation, whether it's stateside, fulfilling law enforcement or security roles, or combat support overseas. But I have these journals, and one's about being a leader, a lot of leadership notes from different sources that I come across. Being a man, so a whole journal on manhood, and I'm a Christian, and I try to make that the foundation of everything that I do. So it's all like biblical manhood, but there's still a lot of pragmatic stuff that can be taken away from it. And then I got my own personal journals too, that they can look back at and just see my thoughts and stuff like that. And then a journal about being a warrior for them. So I have these resources that one day, they can take a look back, and maybe if I have the money, I might get a little extra slick with it and maybe compile it into like one whole book or something for them.
Raising 4 boys, you have the big task of making sure they understand the importance of how to treat women in their life as well. Is there anything particular that you do to make sure that they've got those life lessons?
I really want them to see the relationship I have with their mom. Every marriage has its struggles, and my wife and I, we really do our best not to get in any type of verbal confrontation in front of the boys. We don't get into screaming matches or anything like that, but I mean, like I said, marriage just has its stresses. When money's tight, things get stressed. The boys can stress us out. Sometimes we're not on the same page when it comes to raising them. But the way that I interact with my wife in front of them is huge. I want them to see like, hey, this is how this is how you love a woman. This is how a woman loves her husband. And then of course, so pretty much what I'm saying is living out, that being respectful towards women. And then just as they grow older, when they start to be a little more engaged in that topic, because they're so young right now, it's probably not on their radar. But when they're in their teens, definitely really start getting intentional and like, hey, it's unless having those quote unquote birds and the bees type talks. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Having those talks like, hey, as a man, and if you for me, like specifically for my family as a man of God, here's how we ought to be interacting with women. Here's how you treat them, and here's how you respect them. And so that's stuff I never got from my father. And I wasn't a womanizer or anything like that. A couple of my brothers were out there always chasing after women and trying to get after it that way. But I want my sons to live to a higher what's the word I'm looking for here?
Standard.
There we go.
I agree. And I have 2 daughters, and when I've read about the responsibility you have to them, so much of even just the dad-daughter relationship defines the relationship they go out into the world to seek. And the same applies for boys. How you behave, how you treat your wife is a model for what they're going to go out into the world and seek. And not a lot of dads are conscious of that, probably until it's too late, and they're probably already dealing with some of the repercussions of it. But it's something that I'm very thankful and grateful that I've become aware of it at such a young age. My kid's oldest is still 6, that I still have the ability to create an impact there and just make sure that she has a healthy relationship with me, because then she'll seek out healthy relationships for herself.
Yeah, man. Being intentional is it's huge. I tell my younger airmen, the guys that I supervise, even now, like I'm supervising NCOs now. But I still, as a leader, I'm engaging with the younger guys. But the younger guys who just get married or they come in married with kids, I tell them, hey, be intentional with your family, with your wife, with your kids. Give them those life lessons when you can. When you're with them, actually be with them. Don't just sit in the same living room watching a movie while you're on your phone, or you and your wife are on the phone, and the kids are just kind of left there, numbly looking at the TV. Like, be with them, be intentional, because we never know, inside or outside the military, doesn't matter where you are. You never know when our number is up or when you're going to be taken away. Either you got deployments coming up, or a TDY for training coming up. Like I got one coming up next month. That's a month long. And so I'm really trying to be intentional with being with my kids while I'm on leave. You just gotta be intentional, man. That's huge.
I think that's probably the hardest part for active duty family members, because I think initially the culture is that your military service is a worthy sacrifice for your family time. But I've kind of been talking in the podcast a couple times about like thinking of like a credit card that you can borrow from it for so long, but eventually that debt comes back to haunt you, either when you get out and you're a stranger in your own family, and either your life ends in divorce. But it's almost like what you're doing is you're intentionally making those future deposits, because you know when you're gone, you're going to start borrowing from that account, but you got to make sure you're in the green well before you make that deployment.
Yeah, absolutely. I re-enlisted last year, and that's going to put me at the 10-year mark. So half an active duty career down, but I think we've reached the point now where just all the deployments and the TDYs and everything like that is it's really starting to take a toll. And it's harder on the kids as they get older. So we're actually playing with the idea now of separating from active duty, going guard or reserve, and then getting back to Arizona and actually finally starting to plan some permanent roots.
And I like even building this podcast, it's been a hard struggle because my age kids are 6, 4, and 2, and this is the years that everybody wants back. And it's always an internal struggle of working on the podcast, interviewing dads like you, and then also being intentional that I've been very conscious never to put the podcast first. And I'm always consciously trying to work on it when they're sleeping, because I want to be there, and I'm not going to create a podcast about military dads and then be a dad that doesn't know his kids. I knew from the beginning I didn't want that oxymoron to come true.
Yeah.
As a dad, what was your scariest moment? I can only imagine with 4 boys, you've had some probably just scary ones where they were getting ready to do something like stop.
Well, I've had scary moments like that. The baby who can crawl and is now going up the stairs, and like, where'd the baby go? And all of a sudden you look and he's about to fall down, and he takes a tumble down a couple stairs, and you move faster than Superman to catch him. But I think those aren't the scariest moments. I mean, they're scary, but
yeah,
some of my scariest moments are, it's going to sound weird, and I'll explain, is when I see myself acting like my dad. Those are the scary moments for me. I love my dad very much. I can't say that enough. He did the best he could with what he knew, and the cycles that he grew up in, he was still kind of a slave to. So a lot of addiction to alcohol and kind of leaving my brothers and our mom at home on the wayside to go play basketball and go hit up the bar. But he was very harsh with us at times, and not very repentant afterwards, not very sorrowful. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when I look at my brothers, I see, especially my youngest brother, my dad in them a lot. And I just don't want to be like that. I want to be something more. I believe God has called me to be more. So when I see myself acting like my dad, like if I'm overly harsh with my oldest son, Jackson, for some reason, it scares me, because, it makes me remember that I still have a ways to go as a father, and as developing myself, to becoming a better man. And so those moments are really scary for me, because I don't want to be like how my dad was. I want to be much more intentional with the raising of my sons, and really give them those life lessons. And if I am overly harsh with my son for whatever reason, then I want to do what I saw never happen with my brothers and I. And that was to tell my son, like, hey, I'm sorry, but I messed up. I was, I shouldn't have yelled at you so harshly, or whatever the situation may be. And I'm sorry. And those are one of the things too, I want my kids to remember, is that, dad really did love us, because even though when he was ticked off to the max degree, that he still came back and was able to be gentle with us, I was musing the other day after reading some stuff about the whole, toxic masculinity and all this stuff that is just completely outrageous. Because, a little side note, there's no toxic masculinity. You either got real men or you've got assholes. And sorry if there's a no cussing podcast, but
that's kind of broke the seal and swore a few times.
It's kind of what it comes down to, man. There's no toxic masculinity. It's just dudes being dicks or real men stepping up and stopping that. Yep. But
I love what you said there, because I think if you're a veteran suffering with PSD or you're active duty suffering with PSD, I think that you're going to have a lot of internal anger. And then if you do end up taking that out on your kids, there's this internal mechanism, I think, that kicks in, that you're a failure as a father. And I believe the trick to move past that is to recognize and give yourself grace that you are who you are at the moment you do it, but recognizing and giving yourself forgiveness, and then also asking for forgiveness from your kids. They'll forget so much of whatever happens 10 minutes after it happened. But you stepping up and admitting that mistake, I've done it with my daughter multiple times at night, even my son, where I've lost my cool. It's going to happen. We are human beings. There's no perfect dad that hasn't lost their cool on their kids. The trick is how you model coming back from that. Do you model that it's okay to lose your stuff and not come back, or do you teach them to ask for forgiveness and admit that you were wrong? Because that little dent in their little psychology, I can't even imagine where it's going to go in their life when they learn that you can admit you were wrong and things will be okay. But other than just your relationship with your kids, it's going to have an impact in school as they enter the workforce. Just that ability to not hide whatever they did wrong is going to be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. What you said there about showing yourself some grace is something I learned, because when I came back from Afghanistan, I was much more tense, much more easily angered, and something I'm still working through. I don't think I'm quite as bad as I was when I first got back, but I think it's just a couple of weeks ago, one of my wife's friends said, yeah, he definitely seems much more angry since he's been back. You got to show yourself some grace. I went to go see some counseling services to kind of work through this stuff. My wife and I were seeing a marriage counselor to make sure that we're staying strong together and we learn how to be on the same page. But showing yourself some grace is a huge thing, and owning your mistake and telling your sons, like, hey, I messed up, is also huge. Like I said, like you just said, I'm sure more than one guy who listens to your podcast probably listens to the Jocko podcast. And if so, I mean, when you say extreme ownership, they automatically know. It's just like, oh yeah, like, you own your mistakes, but like, okay, you own your mistake, but now how are you going to fix that mistake? That's something I not only require of myself, but I require, for example, that from my troops at work. It's like, hey, everyone's going to make mistakes. And that's where your greatest lessons in life learned. You don't learn too much really from when you're successful. It's your mistakes that you learn from, and that also includes raising kids. And so you got to show yourself grace, and just to those fathers out there that are struggling with that type of thing, just don't forget to show your kids that you love them. Tell them every night, whatever, if you've read the love language book, whatever their love language is, and you figured it out, just play to that, and let them know, let your kids and your wives know that you love them. And things might be hard right now, but you're not going to give up on them. You're not going to give up on yourself.
I think there's another layer to that that I've just started noticing from my oldest daughter and my son. They're asking more like, do you believe me? Do you believe in me? Like, I remember we were jumping into the pool for the first time, and they'd be like, Daddy, do you believe in me? And I'm like, yeah, Daddy believes in you. Like, even just that phrase, or even the phrase of, I'm proud of you. I mean, how many men grew up in their life without ever hearing those words from their dad, I'm proud of you? And how many things in your life have you done to try to seek that out and to seek that love? And I've consciously made the commitment to make sure that that is something that my kids know from the very beginning, and I'm proud of them, and I believed in them, whatever they're going to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Those words, I'm proud of you, just very short sentence has a powerful impact. I don't think I ever heard those words from my dad as best as I can recall until I joined the military. And that's when my journey into manhood really began, is when I started getting that discipline and stuff like that. And then coming to faith as a Christian is when I really started to get into manhood and figure out, like, okay, how do I need to act and how do my kids need to act? But telling your sons, hey, I'm proud of you is huge. And I tell that to my oldest son as much as I can, because I know it's going to start having an impact. My younger sons, they're still kind of toddling around. Mm-hmm. My 4-year-old's getting to the age now where he's starting to soak a lot of things in on a deeper level. And so the way I'm approaching it is back in the medieval days where knights had their pages. You take this young man and you start grooming him up. You start grooming him up to be a knight, to be a warrior, and that includes not only the discipline fact, but also the reward and the praise.
That is some good stuff right there. I know we made a dent in Dad's universe right there. What do you want your family's legacy to be? Are there any words you want people to describe the Mapes legacy after you're gone?
For my own, if I'm trying to remake this Mapes family branch a stronger one, I want our legacy to be one where we were a family who had honor and integrity, who weren't afraid to be warriors for their country, their community, or their families. I just want our legacy to be one where people, it's like, yeah, that was a strong family right there.
Almost one of like servant leadership, like they were always willing to serve others in whatever calling that was.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can imagine this next question, you're going to have some good advice. What advice would you give a dad looking to come home to their marriage? Not necessarily generally from a transition of employment or deployment, but just in general, if they're struggling in their marriage, what advice would you give?
Don't give up. It can be really hard, and I've seen it too many times where being in the military, because security forces has a pretty high divorce rate, just because the nature of the job. It's stressful, long hours, shift work, stuff like that. But don't give up. Do what you got to do to save and protect your marriage. Like my wife and I, we started doing marriage counseling because we knew, like, hey, we're starting to see some issues here. So let's nip this in the bud and start taking care of these problems before they start, growing like weeds and getting out of control. And then we won't be able to handle it. It'll end up, choking out the marriage. So do what you got to do, whether it's counseling or, figuring out your wife's love language or whatever it is. You just do what you got to do. And don't stop loving your wife. Show them grace, show yourself some grace, and just continue, because things may seem hard in the moment, and that moment might seem like it's lasting forever. But if you keep your nose to the grind, you will get past it. You will get past it.
I like that about marriage counseling. I think there's a lot of stigma and dogma connected to that idea, but people often forget that it's not like we were born with an innate ability to have a great marriage. It's not like just by coming into this world, you're automatically going through the marriage ceremony. There's not like some automatic download to your brain that makes you become successful at it. And it takes work, it takes understanding, and you won't have all the answers, which is why you want to go to someone that specializes in it. Just like if you go to college, just get to learn something in a specialty. It's the same thing in marriage. You weren't born to automatically be successful in it, and you need to give yourself grace and recognize you won't have all the answers and ask for help. And we suck at that as veterans and active duty, because you're designed to be a hero. You're designed to do it, not necessarily do it alone, but do it as a team. But not asking for help is something that really holds back a lot of veterans as a dad, marriage, just in transitioning into civilian life. That's a big one to let go.
Yeah, you gotta humble yourself. You can't go in thinking like the honeymoon phase is going to last forever. Marriage it's hard work, and it only gets harder as the years progress. You start having kids, more than one kid, four boys. Like I can hear in the background right now that my oldest son has apparently gotten in trouble for something. So he's crying, and mom sent him to his room, and
I can imagine 4 boys. Your life is probably a little bit like an Instapot.
Yeah, it could be tough, man. It could be tough for sure, but I wouldn't trade it at all for the world. A lot of people, like there's some dudes out there that I started with that are just like, oh, I can't wait to go deploy or go on this training TDY to get away from everything. I'm just like, man, like I deploy and I do my training TDYs because that's what's required of me and that's what I'm called to do. But don't think for a second that I enjoy being away from my wife and my children.
Yeah.
It always frustrates me when other spouses are like, oh, well, he gets a break, he gets a 6-month break because he's going on deployment. It's like, I'm pretty sure my deployment to Afghanistan wasn't really a break. I was working, essentially every day in a high stress environment. Like I did, I'd much rather be home with my sons. But that's another lesson that I would like them to learn is, if you're going to serve a bigger cause, you're going to have to sacrifice more. So that's why when, like I said, when you're home, you got to be intentional. You got to spend that time, putting into that family bank account.
Yep. And I think just in general, the idea that you can put your marriage on hold is one that will always lead to a failure because it's a guaranteed certainty your kids will betray you and leave. And your wife will be there for the rest of both of your lives. And if you don't put her first through everything, even above military service, you're going to get out of the military at 20 years or 10 or whatever, how many years. And you're going to be so far in emotional debt with her marriage that you'll be strangers and it'll just end. And it's not something that you can put on hold. It requires daily consistent action. No matter where you're at in the world, there's ways to get creative and show up in people's lives when you're not even there. All of those things will come back and either make a successful marriage long-term or it'll be one that you're just waiting for the credit card collectors to come and be like, sorry, life's going to over. You're going to have to start again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. The relationship between husband and wife is the foundation for the family strength. I agree with that 100%.
And even with 4 kids, it can be easy to get lost. And I remember when kids were younger, that it's easier to you think, oh, I need to put my kids first, and that's what's going to matter. It's like, no, your kids will need you. They'll survive. Despite whatever you don't give them, they'll most likely still turn out to be good adults. And but your wife is the one that's going to be there through it all. So that's where our focus always needs to be. What is a resource, a book, or recommend you for other military veteran dads, and why?
So one book that I think will really play to military dads is called Raising a Modern Day Knight. So one, it has that the warrior terminology, being a knight, who doesn't want to dress up in armor and grab their shield and sword and go off to battle. I think that's why some of us join the military. But it's all about raising your boys into men, and it's particularly keen on ceremony. So again, us military guys, from graduating, basic training, the graduation ceremonies and promotion ceremonies and ceremonies for ceremonies, everything special is marked by some type of ceremony. And so the book plays off that idea. For every milestone that your child hits, you mark it with ceremony. And it is coming from the Christian worldview. But even if you're not a Christian or overly religious or a different religion, there's still some really good takeaways that you can get from that book regarding raising your boys purposefully, defining what a man is to them, and using the occasion of ceremonies to mark very important life events for them. Because a lot of kids wander around these days and they wonder if I'm really a man. And if you take time to show your sons, like, he's going off to college, just hold the ceremony, like, hey, you're off, you are a man, and we're doing this just to show you. And it can be a simple thing as a coin, give your kid a coin. I've already got 4 coins for my boys set aside. And
I got a drawer full of challenge coins my kids are always taking and playing with.
Yeah, I keep mine locked up, but as they get older, they're figuring out how to unlock things. But when they get older, what I plan on giving them is kind of like this quote unquote survival pack. It's going to have their coin in there. It's going to have a little pocket knife, probably like a Gerber. I love Gerber knives.
I haven't owned a Gerber knife since the military, but man, they were handy. I agree.
It's going to have like a little pocket-sized Bible for them, but just little things. It's like, they can go out into the world. They got their coin, they got the knife, they got their Bible with them.
Almost like permission that you believe in them. This is my permission for you to go out there and be you.
Yeah.
A lot of people spend a lot of time still just wandering around their parents, waiting for that permission to go, or that word go. And like, I got you, you're going to be successful. And that's probably why they end up 28 in people's basements, is because they're still waiting for permission. So I like that idea of marking it with a milestone.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Teach your kids to be assertive too. Like, oh, hey, you want to go tackle that goal over there? Oh, absolutely. Go get after it. And then let me know how it turns out. Or like, hey, I see you're doing it this way, but have you thought about doing it this way? So let them be assertive, but give that guidance. And if they're victorious, mark that with some ceremony. Give them a coin, give them something. Some type of celebration.
Mm-hmm. Because I'm sure they'll hang on to those long after our we've been lived on this earth. Probably even something they pass on to their kids as well.
Yeah,
it becomes a new heirloom of the Mapes family tree. Yeah,
and that'd be most ideal, man. I'd love to see the coins I've got my kids, just passed down. My sons give them to their sons, and so on and so forth.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this interview, Michael. It's been really good, and I know we impacted some military veteran dads with the conversation we've had. What's a parting piece of advice you want to leave for other dads?
Put your nose to the grind. Don't stop loving your children. Don't stop loving your wife. Life is hard, so be a man about it. To quote a little bit of scripture, this is one that is really foundational to me, but the Apostle Paul wrote, stand firm in the faith, be strong, act like men. Let all that you do be done in love. And even if you're not a person of faith, like, you can still stand strong, because life is going to get hard. It's going to try to knock you around. It's going to try to knock you on your ass. And it might knock you on your ass, but you treat life like a burpee. It's going to knock you down. Well, your job is to get up as quick as you can, and then it's going to knock you down again. So your job is to get up, do it as quick as you can. So you got to stand firm and be a man. Be strong, assertive, be aggressive when
That's a wrap.
aggression is
and
required.
Thank you for listening to today's show, and I really hope you enjoyed it. The lifeblood of any new podcast are the reviews. If you haven't reviewed the podcast yet on iTunes, I would really appreciate it, and you will help us get the message out to even more military veteran dads. As John Maxwell says, if there is hope in the future, there is power in the present. Dads, it's time to come home.
Like I said, I know we made some impact, and I really appreciate you sharing your story and being open and vulnerable with us.
I appreciate it, brother, man. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for your service. Lord knows that I love the Marines. You guys get after it, man.
Well, thank you.